Racing and driving games have always been a very popular genre in games. Especially here in the UK, we are a large bunch of petrol heads by and large. But really, rally games have always been at the forefront of that, pushing modern gaming graphics right back with the legendary Sega Rally in arcades and then the Saturn. V-Rally was an early hit for the PlayStation, which helped the origins of the late great Colin McRae title on the original PlayStation, the PC and even the Game Boy. The pioneering game was a huge hit in 1998 for Codemasters when it managed to push the racing genre forward and start a long-running franchise for the 8-bit budget pioneers. As the years rolled by, the Colin McRae tag was dropped and it became the Dirt series, which has ramped up the content, the cars and technology ever since. It's always been based on the internal Ego engine, which itself was derived from Sony's own Fire engine. It powers many of the Codemaster Racing releases over the years, including the F1 series, and it has been augmented and tuned to achieve fast and pretty visuals with great physics and control. As the years rolled by, Dirt has moved into more than just a rally simulator though. For the latest title here we get Rallycross, accompanying ice racing, truck racing and a fully fledged story-driven career mode in full-on Days of Thunder style. My sample preview here of an early PC build is of another new mode called Playgrounds, which is a full track editor taking me right back to those C64 Codemaster days of track editors. With a simple modular Lego-like design, you can create stunt tracks, ski runs, bus graveyards or full-on monster truck stadiums and far more besides. These can be tested and tweaked to your heart's content before sharing with the community and also dipping into others' designs. At the moment you have a limited set of arenas to pick from, and these, although not the biggest, do not stop some creative designs and tracks. The wealth already on the game gives you a good example of what can be achieved and how hard some of them actually are. The community and the teams are already creating ones that you can test even now, and obviously this will just swamp out more once the game releases. Already in this early build, control and physics feel good. They're obviously more arcadey than sim in this mode per se, but that may or may not carry over to the full race modes, but it still tracks well within that mix of fun yet realistic action. The simulation is there and it certainly isn't easy, but it is a slightly more forgiving than you would get in a real full-on simulation title, but like I say, this is an early build. Some of the crashes and flips can be a little floaty and bouncy, and the throttle control on the triggers could be a little wider in sensitivity, but it must be stressed again, this is very much a work in progress build, and much of this will change, will improve and will be adjustable in the final game, I'm sure. Drifting is excellent and it really helps navigate the turns and chicanes. Once you get customised to each car type and track layout, your speed and skill picks up, with the rewards paying off for some short practice. I did find myself quickly trying to beat online times or score records in the track section, and this is already, I can see, a competitive section that the title will push forward. Now at this early stage the graphic options are present with a great deal of customization here with the Ego engine. Resolution output, rendering, history of rendering frames for temporal accumulation, reconstruction can all be independently changed and updated. As it is an early build though, and some features are still being developed such as the shadow maps and the final performance levels, I will not dive too deep into these because it wouldn't be fair, and this mode doesn't really give you a full representation of how the game looks. There is some footage here of B-roll that I was given of the full game itself, which will be coming across all formats, so this gives you an idea of how it will expand out into the bigger tracks. Now all that said, on my Ryzen 2700 CPU and RTX 2070 at auto settings, I could run a stable 60 FPS at 1080p and likely much higher with no issues at all. When you do get time to admire the details, the car models and track details are all pretty good by and large, certainly at this early stage. The presentation and colour schemes are all very bright and loud, lots of bright colours, pinks, purples, yellows, reds, blues, and this gives a very bright and entertaining look to the title. The mixture of the arenas, the quality of the physics, the amount of destruction in terms of knocking things over, and having a lot of options in this playground mode does enable you to at least try out some of the physics and how the different vehicles handle, from the jeeps, the trucks, the big monster trucks, and the cars, and the old rally cars, and that great mixture of sounds, the engines, and the music is again a mixture of some old 80s and 90s, almost AC/DC style tunes in there, which weren't bad, to some other pretty gangster rock stuff which doesn't sound quite as good to my older ears. But generally there's a good mixture of sound and audio within the title to really pull you in alongside the racing action rendering. So some of the actual material quality is very good. That velvet look on the dashboard there, the light cascade on materials, the way sun bounces off the reflectance, the dust, the alpha, the particles, and the use of normal maps on deformation of tyres and the dirt, all that kind of area works well. It's certainly an early build and it's quite small, so this may not be the best quality materials and texture quality that the whole game runs, but it's a good start, and I'm sure improvements, and certainly the B-roll footage shows the game off in a ironically better light than this playground mode does, but that's obviously par for the course because it isn't really the focus of the mode. It's more about playing the game and enjoying the physics. But lighting calculations, shadow quality and all of that are pretty good, but the shadows are certainly not at the highest level, and it's one area where, along others, there'll be improvements in the final game, I'm sure. But it doesn't skimp on the effects. Screen space reflections are used both on cars, bonnets and wet floors, and you get lots of light sources, some volumetric touches as well, and some bloom effects. So overall it's got the right combination to really impress once it finally releases, but it's not really the point to go digging deep into what the game and the quality of the graphics look like in this early build, but the final one will certainly have a much better look. It's also a title that will fully support both the PS5 and the Series X in next generation releases, and these are enhanced with better visuals, 4K resolutions and 120 FPS modes. Now, as I've mentioned many times before, I think 60 FPS is where all racing titles should target at all times. That's not always possible and it's not always going to break the game, but if you can, that vital input time improvement is required. So doubling that is certainly not to be sniffed at. 120 FPS will make a huge difference because it should halve that or even more in terms of those fast input times. Now, if you're lucky enough, which I am, to have 120 FPS mode, then I'll certainly be testing that out. And I think this is where 120 FPS modes should only really be concentrated for by giving it as an option, but 60 is still great, but having 120 FPS on next gen consoles and PC really adds a great deal to the title's impact, in my opinion. It's packing quite a lot into the single player mode itself, and obviously that all important online and esports section will be where it has its longest legs. And right now the playground mode is a very small sample of what we can expect, but it's a very promising start with great effects, interaction and controls, and an excellent scaling option on those graphical settings across a wide variety of hardware. And that's vital for a title that's a cross-gen launch game that's going to hit everything from the Xbox One right up to the Series X. This was a fast and quick look at Dirt 5 preview build on PC, much more to come, and if you like this or anything else then please subscribe, like and share where appropriate. Otherwise, I'll see you on the racetrack.